production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, all you beautiful people. It is so great to see you here today at the City Club, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. Today's Friday, January 10th. My name is Dan Moulthrop. I'm the Chief Executive here, and it is our first forum at the City Club for 2025. Welcome back to all of you. Our forum today is part of our Local Heroes series, which is presented in partnership with Citizens and Enbridge. This series spotlights local champions here in Northeast Ohio whose hard work changes the way we view ourselves and our community. It also changes our community for the better. We are pleased to be able to recognize and celebrate today Victor Ruiz, who, yes. I love you, Victor. It's so great to have you. Victor, as I think all of you know, just last week wrapped a 15-year tenure as president and CEO of Esperanza Incorporated. Esperanza is located on Cleveland's west side, and for the last 40 years, they just celebrated their 40th anniversary last year, has worked to improve the lives of Latino youth and their families through education. Greater Cleveland has one of the fastest growing Hispanic and Latino populations in the state, and with that, increased needs for services and opportunities. Victor himself came to Cleveland 42 years ago from Puerto Rico, and during his tenure at Esperanza, he helped to transform the lives of thousands of Northeast Ohio families. He's a champion of the Latino and Hispanic representation and has held numerous leadership roles in the community, serving as chairman of the board of trustees for Cuyahoga Community College. Pause for applause. He also sits on the editorial board of the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com and was a member of Cuyahoga County Executive-elect Chris Ronayne's transition team. He's, of course, the county executive now. Today, we all have the privilege to hear more about Victor's contributions to Northeast Ohio, what we can envision for Esperanza's next 40 years, and some lessons in leadership, I'm sure, as well. Moderating our conversation today is a great friend of the City Club, Keisha Gonzalez. She's Senior Director of Social Impact Investing and Economic and Community Development at the Cleveland Foundation. Please join me in welcoming both of these wonderful leaders. Quick reminder before we start, if you have a question for our speaker and you're listening on WKSU or watching us online, you can text that question to 330-541-5794, and our staff will work it into the program. Take it away, Keisha. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for being here with us today. Such an exciting and monumentous moment in time for our community here in Northeast Ohio. And first of all, Victor, just an extension of gratitude. The Latino community in Cleveland is better because of you. I am here because of the work you've done at Esperanza. And I'm sure many in this room today have benefited from the amazing work that Esperanza has put before us in our neighborhood. So thank you so much. So huge gratitude there.
Thank you.
I want to jump right in just because there's so much to talk about and
Right.
our time is limited. So just to jump right in, Victor, locally and nationally, right, you're recognized as a trailblazer in advancing the conditions for educational outcomes in our community. And as we look to carry this conversation with an eye to the future, I really want to spend some time understanding who are you, what has brought you to this work, and how has it influenced your impact across Northeast Ohio over the past 15 years and beyond?
Thank you, Keisha, and I want to recognize Keisha as an Esperanza alumni. And, she brings it up often, but I remember interviewing Keisha for her scholarship, and about 15 years ago, right?
Same age as my son.
Yeah. So this is full circle, as you said. And I want to thank my family and friends who are here, the Esperanza board members who are here, the wonderful staff representatives who are here, the new CEO of Esperanza, Margaret Sanchez. And of course, my wife of 31 years, Danielle. So going back, I would start by saying that the work of Esperanza has always aligned to who I am and my values. I came here at the age of 5 with my mom and my brother, and we had no choice. We had to come here. And I think some of the points I'll bring up that really align is, one, I've always said this, I'm the poster child for all things public. I was a beneficiary of our country's wonderful social safety net. From education to housing to the free cheese lines, I did it all. And within that, though, there was almost a dogged belief by my mom that was just a tool, and that the ultimate aim was independence and self-sufficiency, and that the only way to get there was through education. There was nothing else. Education, and that was pounded and drilled into me for my whole life. So, I understood that, and I took advantage of all the educational opportunities that I had. Couple that with eventually a recognition that our public social safety net is always under attack. Always. And that if it wasn't for that, I would not be here. So how does that align to Esperanza? So, I know Dan said, Victor, don't read your notes. Dan, I need to read my notes on this one. I want to read I keep the original articles of incorporation of Esperanza close, because the original purpose that our founding individuals, visionaries really, are just still very relevant today. So a couple things. One, first of all, it's called the Cleveland Hispanic Scholarship Fund. And one of the original, the purpose was to encourage and promote intellectual and academic development of the greater Cleveland Hispanic community. And another one is to lessen neighborhood tension and combat deterioration in the greater Cleveland Hispanic community. And here's the important part. By motivating community involvement in the education of its student members, and by instilling in the community the value of education as a means to achieve self-awareness and self-fulfillment. So as I tied that back to my personal values, education, independence, self-sufficiency, it all really intersected extremely well here.
So, and Victor, remind us when these words were brought together.
1981.
Amazing.
81, 82, the organization was incorporated in 83. So, yeah.
And they still stand strong today.
And they still stand strong today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing a part of you and your childhood and what brings you here to us today, because we've all reaped the benefit of what you bring to the table. So thank you. I want to go a little bit deeper into your experience and your contributions to Northeast Ohio's Latino community. Our community and our history is not a recent one. And we're constantly changing, and we've evolved drastically, particularly over the past 10, 15 years. As we look to the future, what are some important seeds of knowledge that we need to plant today in order to secure the future and the continued prosperity and momentum for the Latino community across Northeast Ohio?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we have is really defining what Latino, Latina means.
Absolutely.
And what are the ties that bind us? Language alone is not enough. So I think the work that we need to continue doing is, what is our identity? And within that identity, understanding that there isn't just one thing that defines us. There's different histories. There's different, ideologies, experiences. So how do we bring all of those things together to create a vision for our community that allows us to have that diversity and individuality, but still be able to thrive together.
Absolutely. And to kind of go a little bit deeper into that, just based on your experience in your 15 years and beyond working in Northeast Ohio, oftentimes we are stuck with the conundrum of being looked at as a monolith. While we can explore that ourselves as a community, we can elevate those differences. How do we educate others? And how do we bring others along with us as we're exploring a lot of internal difficulties as a Latin community, a lot of things that we have to heal from, grow from, but we also have to bring others with us to sort of dispel that idea that we are a monolithic population.
Yeah, and it's something I'll touch on later is we need to engage with a broader community. And I think, as I think back in my career and, and we touched on this in our debrief, some of the challenges I had, one of the things I always heard was, Esperanza gets everything. And I say, yeah, but what you're not seeing is that I've hit every corner of Cleveland, Ohio, and beyond. And I think we can't just sit in our corners and expect people to come to us. We need to go out and engage in the broader work of the community and help the broader community understand the value that we bring and what we need to continue being successful.
Absolutely, thank you. That one's a little bit off script, so appreciate you jumping in. So your time at Esperanza has introduced what I consider to be a reimagination of the conditions necessary for there to be excellence in education. And this really is evidence of Esperanza's growth from just providing scholarships to really thinking about what it means to treat the whole family's educational and workforce needs in order for the children to be successful. As you think about the future of Esperanza, as you think about new leadership, as you think about the conditions within our community and the new leadership that's rising, what's on the horizon for the future?
Yeah, and I'll before I go there, go back to the start of your question is why it's important to treat the whole child and the whole family is, one of the, things I came to the table was that, providing students the idea of a scholarship is not enough.
Absolutely.
So the organization was founded to promote post-secondary education and incentivize it through a scholarship. That's important. But you also need to do all the other work, which as a community we've done really well understanding what the wraparound needs are. And that you cannot serve the child without serving the whole family. I've always said that a family can be the greatest asset, it can also be the worst asset. So that serving the needs of the entire family are critical for success for all members. In terms of what's on the horizon, I am not going to steal Margaret's thunder. But I think some things we can agree on. One is that as a community, we are redefining what it means to educate people, and redefining what success means. And that is evolving. That, for my generation, success was college. That's not necessarily the case for everyone. We have to create the environment where if that's the direction someone wants to go in, they have that access to it. So expanding what it means for people to learn, what it means for people to be successful, I think that's important. I think the other thing is, Esperanza has a great model. It's been kind of guarded in, 25th and Clark area. It's time to grow. It's time to go past that. It's time to expand the borders, in other words. So I think as we look at what is the future of Esperanza, I would say grow what's working, continue expanding how we serve people, and also understand that learning is a lifetime journey. So how do we provide opportunities for all of us at whatever journey and point in our lives we're in?
Absolutely fabulous. And I love that idea of kind of the expansion and growth of Esperanza's reach. While we love to have you at home in Clark Fulton, totally understand the future of opportunity that lives
and
there.
Clark Fulton will always be home, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that we can't do more. I don't want the councilwoman saying, hey, I saw the councilwoman. I'm like, hold on, don't get me in trouble with this.
I'm going to cause a riot. Oh, my goodness. So to carry on with our conversation here, one of the most powerful impacts of your tenure at Esperanza has been your ability to elevate what's going on here at home to state and national levels. From your vantage point and within the context of the current state and national politics, what form and function must organizations like Esperanza, so thinking about our Latin serving organizations as a whole, what functions must we take to continue to advance the conditions for our community within the dynamics we're living in today?
Yeah, great question. When I started, we had this horrible graduation rate of 70% of our youth were dropping out. And what we realized was that this is not the family's problem. This is not just our problem. This is a whole community's concern. And we're bold enough to say, no, wait a minute, this impacts the country as a whole, right? And that not only were we going to raise awareness to it for whoever was listening, but we needed to create those partnerships and support systems to help address that. So that's why that's important, is that what impacts our community here should matter to everyone. And then in terms of what we have to do is we need to be active in promoting that. Again, going back to this idea of it's not going to come to us. So for us, it was actively, one is accepting the responsibility that we have to address this and that we have to do whatever it takes. And then being active and out there, creating coalitions, building partnerships, bringing resources to help address it.
And what was that journey like? The coalition building,
It was easy, Keisha. No.
Because we all hear it today still, right? Where this need to continue to build coalitions and roundtables and collective bodies of work. It is not easy work.
No, it's not. And
what did you learn in that process?
Well, what I learned, unfortunately, and I think we know this, is that sometimes you get more love outside of your home than you do in your home.
This is true.
And that's why it was important to build those national coalitions. So when I brought a Unidos US, National Council La Raza, say, hey, here's our partner, more of the local people listened. So it's multiple strategies, but it's really, again, finding whoever, talking to as many people as you can, and then bringing in those partners to build your coalition of people who believe in what you're saying, and then you eventually bring those people in that are.
And I love that you brought up the work that you've done with La Raza, because I think there's an important facet that we often forget in doing this work, be it through Esperanza or any other BIPOC-led and serving organization, is that sometimes we do have to leave home for a moment and bring those lessons back here. And I think that you guys are a shining example of that. So I love that you elevated that. Something else that I did want to ask is you talked about the importance and the elevation of our value as a community, which is why we needed to invest in the educational outcomes in the community. Can you speak a little bit to the work that you have done to build compelling narrative about the value of our community to the workforce sector, to enterprises, to the higher education system? Because I think there's often this space or a disconnect that we feel that there's a sense of not belonging or not being part of. What's that journey been like and your influence in that space?
No, thank you. I think the first thing is, demanding that people recognize that we exist. Mm-hmm. And that we are beyond the numbers. Oh, they're only 8% of the voting bloc. They're only 10% of the school population. That 8% is 5,000 children, right? So I think getting people to acknowledge that we exist is hard, but critical. And then you're able to help people understand the value that we bring and why we are important. For me, we have homegrown, bilingual, highly educated talent that wants to stay here, and it's cheaper than you recruiting halfway around the world. That's been the narrative. Yeah. It's still not easy. It's still not easy. Again, I'm seeing progress. But I think as Clevelanders who we love to go outside, recognizing that talent is here.
And what is the work that we need to do for that talent to recognize their value when they're joining the workforce and when they're approaching and pursuing opportunities in the workforce?
I think I always tell our students is that our diversity, our bilingualism, the way we speak Spanish, wherever you're from, that's our superpower.
It is.
And that, finding, it's not going to be always easy, but clinging to organizations that support you to help you make it through those rough patches is important. So that's why it's important for organizations like Esperanza to extend beyond getting that bachelor's degree, connecting to career opportunities, internships, fellowships, to continue providing that support. That's why our ERGs, employee resource groups, are so important in our companies, because once they're in these institutions, they have that support system there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know one of the biggest things that I know that myself, as I'm entering my mid-30s, is this realization. Is this realization of we were never taught to monetize those superpowers.
That's right.
And how to ask to be compensated appropriately and to take up space, because those skill sets are a value add. So I love that the Esperanza's work continues to elevate beyond completing their bachelor's degree and really saying, how are you navigating the workforce and connecting them to those appropriate networks? So I'd love to hear that. So I'm gonna transition over to, I don't want to quite call it our last question, but I think to me it's one of our most powerful questions that we're going to close out with.
Your hardest question.
It is the hardest question.
The one that kept me up last night.
We are all aware, right, that if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together. At this moment in time, our people are experiencing a paralyzing fear of erasure and demonization within the American narrative. What advice do you have to communities of color to remain resilient and continue to advance in la lucha, in the fight? Because it's something that's so ingrained in us that we have to live in a state of resiliency and fight. But it feels like it's getting harder and harder as a narrative and storytelling continues to develop.
Yeah, and it was your hardest question, and it really did keep me up last night. But it was such a thought-provoking question. So, and you said something in our call the other day that kind of helped me with this. So I'm going to go to pop culture.
I think I know where you're going.
So I have three references. One, Bad Bunny, right?
Yes.
His new album, Debí tirar más fotos, I should have taken more pictures. Hamilton, another Boricua, right? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And Coco, greatest animated, Remember Me, right? And the thread that connects all of these is intentionality and action. I should have taken more photos. Who's telling my story, and who's remembering me? So I say that because erasure happens when you let it happen. And for us to ensure that our community is not erased, we have to be active in telling our own story and demanding that people hear it. So with that, I have a call to action for our community is we need to get back to a time when we're sitting around the table together talking about our community. Not that we have to always agree, but at a minimum, we're acknowledging each other and the work that we're doing and ensuring that that erasure doesn't happen.
That was
Thank you.
You're going to get me crying today. Kind of with our last few minutes together, I want to make sure that we leave space for you to share what's on your heart.
Thank you.
Victor, you've had a long legacy here with Esperanza. You have an even longer legacy left
Yes,
to
hopefully.
influence.
Hopefully.
To influence Northeast Ohio and beyond, and La Causa for our community. What's on your heart these days, and what do you think it's going to carry you to?
You know, I want to continue the work of helping our people. And our people is broad, is all of us, right? So I'm going into this transition with a uncharacteristic calmness, you know. Check in on me in 6 months.
I'm going to set the reminder.
But, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. And I just want to plug in where it makes sense, including helping leaders like you, you know, take the baton and carry the work forward. So I'm going, you know, we have a grandson. He's 1+ years old, and we're enjoying him. You know, kind of hoping I take my health a little more serious, you know, with a little more time maybe. So yeah, I'm going into this with an open mind.
Thank you so much
Thank
for,
you.
again, closing us out with sitting what's on your heart. We are, again, just so excited to have had this time with you and to be able to dive in a little bit deeper to kind of what you see for the future for our community, Victor. So thank you for your service, and thank you for all the time that you've shared with us across the community.
Thank you, Keisha.
Absolutely, Victor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great question. Thank you.
Ooh, I lost my... And I think with that, we will be transitioning. Yeah. Okay, so now that I have the script, which I left on the chair, we're about to begin the audience Q&A for our live stream and radio audience. I'm Keisha Gonzalez, Senior Director of Social Impact Investing and Economic and Community Development at the Cleveland Foundation, and the moderator for today's conversation. Today we're hearing from Victor Ruiz, who completed his 15-year tenure as President and CEO of Esperanza Inc. last week. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, as well as those joining via live stream at cityclub.org or live radio broadcasts at 89.7 IdeaStream Public Media. If you'd like to text questions for Victor, please text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And the City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have the first question, please?
Hi there. I'm going to read one of our text questions as our first question. How has gentrification on the Near West Side affected the Hispanic community in the 25th and Clark Avenue area?
Is that for Keisha? We might want to tag team this one.
We can definitely tag. You can kick it off, though.
I will. You know, I'll share with you, you know, when I look at it from education systems perspective, I don't think we've seen an impact. Our schools are still full, right? From a leader of an organization who was responsible for kind of looking at it from a broader perspective, from what is the cost of our rent to all these other things. it is a concern. And, nonprofits who are program-oriented, have this struggle always, are we landlords or are we focused? So it's definitely a concern. It's a major strategic priority for Esperanza to think about place and where we belong and ensure that we are not displaced. So,
yeah, I think what's really critical about what's going on in Clark Fulton right now is that we have to acknowledge the fact that beyond just addressing the economic dynamics of gentrification, which are often very familiar to us, that we're also addressing the psychological dynamics of gentrification and making sure that our people moving forward into the future as the markets change and opportunities to create wealth start to surface for us, that we are still feeling like our culture is vibrant, that we can hear it, we can taste it, we can see it, and that tangible essence of community is still living at that intersection, right? So, we continue to do the work, right, to preserve the conditions for folks to have a life well lived in Clark Fulton, but what is most important is the work of Esperanza, Hispanic Business Center, Metro West Community Development Organization to make sure that the dynamics of that culture and that vibrancy lives in perpetuity. Thanks for letting me join that question.
Oh no, this is your.
Congratulations, Victor, on all the wonderful work you do.
Thank you.
I'm Merle Johnson, former member of the State Board of Education. And for many, many decades, there has been a national movement on to dismantle public education.
Sure.
And that was pretty evident in Project 2025, where the plan is to actually get rid of the Department of Education. And people of color will be the ones who are hurt the most by that. So my question is, what are you doing? What are organizations that you're a member of? Anything that you're doing. I always agree with your statements when you respond in the editorial sections of the Cleveland.com. So I know that you believe in public education. So what are you doing to try to save it? That's the best way I can put that.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. My 7th grade teacher, by the way.
Oh!
I don't know if she wanted me to say that. And at Charles Elliott Middle School, Ms. Johnson, not enough. We're not doing enough. And I think going back to the question you asked earlier around what is the future of Esperanza, I think advocacy at a more, systemic government type level is critical because that dismantling is happening, chipping away for years. The straight answer is not enough. And I would say that Cleveland, we kind of basically say, well, we are outnumbered at the state level, and we kind of put our hands up and don't fight more. So I think it's a fight that Cleveland and other similar school districts and urban centers need to take on together.
Can you all hear me? Great. So hi, Victor. You have been a transformational leader for a lot of us in this room. So my first question, because they're like maybe too quick, who was a transformational leader in your life? And then what would you say to young Latinas trying to just make it, who are just trying to go through their careers, learn and grow? Like, I see a lot of my peers in here. What would you tell us on our journey as well? And what type of qualities should we look for in those mentors that are going to take us further and help us grow?
Great, thank you. First, I always say it's my mom, and I think I talked about, transformational leader. Single mother, 1.3 jobs, and going to Tri-C, And, her dream was to get a degree. It never happened. So I think that was one of the things that, so when I think about what are the qualities of a transformational leader, from, hard work, values-driven, courageous, So that's it for me. Well, more, but that's the most important. In terms of advice to young people, it's getting over your self-doubts.
I have admired your impact and the way that you have been, the way the Latino graduation rate has succeeded under your leadership. As a Latina in the workforce, if I want to have the impact that you have had, what is the number one piece of advice? I have a job, I'm ready in the workforce. What do I need to be doing to make sure I can have the impact that you have had in our community?
That's a good one.
Well, she asked good questions too. Let me back up a point, because I didn't have my notes, because Dan told me not to look at my notes. But a point, when I got to Esperanza, I had it was a combination of this powerful purpose, and at the time, a board who entrusted me to get us there, right? So I was allowed to make a lot of mistakes. And so the only answer I can think of right now is don't be afraid to make mistakes, to speak up, to call things out when they're not right, to demand what is right for you. And going back to that fear, you have to have almost like this naive courage to you that you're like, I'm just going to do it regardless of what the consequences. I'm not telling you to take that for everything, right? I'm thinking more around advocating for yourself, advocating for your community, advocating for your values, because those are all grounded in what's right. Is, again, overcoming this fear of, because in our culture, what are we told? Don't speak up. Don't rock the boat.
Calladita se me va bonito.
That's right. Put your head down, right? We have to overcome those things.
Hello, hello. I'm Cami Negrete. I am a board member of Esperanza. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Victor, to think about an example that brings to life the power of mentoring. But the reason for that, so I'm giving you a preview, is because I think in this room there is a broad spectrum of awareness and engagement with Esperanza. Some of us are deep in, 12, 13 years for me. Some of us are just getting familiar with the organization. And mentoring is one of many avenues to learn the stories of the people that Esperanza serves, and to get hooked, and to feel the passion and resilience and determination of the Latino Northeast Ohio people. And so I'm curious if you can talk about the transformational nature of mentoring, either at the high school or college level, that Esperanza brings to the table as a way that anybody that is not currently actively engaged with Esperanza, they can dip their toe with as little as 1 hour a month.
Thank you, Cami. Surprised you didn't ask for money either. Let me start off by talking about our mentoring model. Our mentoring model basically rejected all the quote-unquote best practices around mentoring. Mentoring had this box, and including, it doesn't matter who your mentor is as long as they're a caring individual. Yes, we need you to be caring, but sometimes I want someone who looks like me. I want someone who's gone through the same experiences as me. Oh, and by the way, just because you don't have a college degree doesn't mean that you can't add value to my life. So that has been, I think, really focusing on individuals who care and can provide value to our students is really important. And now I'm going to pick on someone, Elisa Semide. One of our bright stars has been with us since age 11 or 12. went through our programs, started working. Brilliant young woman who has this hunger and desire and an openness and a hunger for mentoring. And I see her changing every day. And one day, you will be writing her a check. I know you will be. She aspires to be a fundraising expert to bring resources to our community, and under the continued mentorship of Margaret, I know it'll happen. So at least I've seen her evolution, so.
So I do have 2 questions for you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The first one is, in your opinion, how good or bad is like the cultural mix that we bring? Like, for example, I've been hearing a lot about Puerto Ricans complaining about Americans coming over and putting their own, taking away the culture, like putting hotels or whatever and basically gentrifying it. But also on the other side, here in the States, just how people complain about like talking English because you're in the States, or maybe don't do this custom because we're not used to it. So how would you say, is it positive or negative to have that like cultural mix between the Latino people and like American or like Native people? Mm-hmm. And then my second question would be, I'm a filmmaker and I believe in the impact of like media. So are you collaborating with like the Cleveland Film Commission or any sort of commission or program to be like showing the Latino people and the culture or like the media here in Cleveland? Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you, Valentina. Okay, great. You know, I think you bring up a great point, and I think it all boils down to respect and cultural humility, and recognizing that when you're in someone else's home, you are a guest. And I think what's happening in Puerto Rico is that, not that we don't want others, is that when you're in our home, you respect our home, particularly what belongs to us, our land, our beaches. I don't know if you just saw, a tourist who burned down 3 businesses because they refused to serve her more alcohol. So, and the same thing here, right? The language and the rhetoric that we hear here is disrespectful, it's dehumanizing. So it all boils down to, how do we respect each other wherever you are? So that's, and then, your other around, I'll just broaden it to the arts and then hand it off to Keisha again, is we have a very robust and vibrant art scene in our community, and always looking for ways to expand that. So I don't know because you've really led a lot of these efforts.
Yeah, it's a hard space, right? In Spanish, we say ni de aquí ni de allá, right? When you exist and you straddle 2 worlds, you're not from here, nor are you from there. One thing that I kind of always stand on is, do not allow these types of sentiments and these types of instances of violence form an erasure, right? Always stand on your culture, always stand on your language, and always extend an invitation to learn, right? And going to the point that Victor, just made, is that there are a plethora of opportunities across Cleveland and across Northeast Ohio to welcome others to really understand what is the richness and value of our culture and what we bring to value here across Cleveland and across Northeast Ohio. The gentrification issue in Puerto Rico is one that is becoming emotionally tied more and more over time to those of us who are born here in the States, like myself, right? So one of the things I'd like to encourage younger, in this case Puerto Ricans, is to try to make it back home. Start to make that direct connection with the land. Start to try to understand your roots. And as always, land is power, whether you're here in Cleveland or you're somewhere else. If you are able to and compelled to explore what it means to start to build some roots back on the island, I think that is a really powerful statement to be able to kind of send to kind of the wave of gentrification happening across the island.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Victor. I want to once again, on behalf of all of us here, thank you for what has been an amazing career and an amazing contribution to this community. You spoke earlier about coalitions and the need for communities to come together and form coalitions with the rising political climate that we're looking at right now and the negative impact anticipated on a number of minority communities. What kinds of coalitions might you suggest need to be formed, and what issues do you think we really need to take a look at?
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Charles. Charles C. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think we need to, I find that we have a lot more in common many times than we have differences, and that when one group is targeted and attacked, that doesn't mean the rest of us are safe. So I think, you know, mentioned public education is under attack, definitely at the state level, and it's coming at the federal level as well. Some of our basic, you know, basic civil rights. So in terms of, you know, I think one coming together to understand how we're all impacted and having those conversations is critically important. And we're having those conversations in silos, but if we bring them together, that makes us a bigger and broader group of people going after these things. So the pessimist in me says there's a lot of things coming down that are going to impact a lot of us. And I think it's just a matter of sitting down with each other, recognizing that we are going to be impacted, that we are targets, all of us, and how do we come together to combat that?
And I think during our, when we got together to talk about our questions for today, we talked about convergence points. Mm-hmm. Like, what does it mean to think about the aligned agendas and the Black, AAPI, Latin, Native communities? We all have our autonomous agendas, right, as communities that we want to advance. But how do we come together and identify what are the convergence points that make us stronger at the state and national level to be able to truly drive system changes? So there's so many entry points, and I do agree with you on the pessimist point. There is a lot. Like, we're bracing ourselves, yes, right? Yeah. Winter is coming.
Hi, my name's Lorraine, and I have a question for you based on the call to action that you did made earlier. So that really is directed into individuals. When you think about it, as you stand here and you're the listener, I can't help but think about the moment in time in terms of where we are in history, the challenges, the opportunities. This region has always been a warrior once it sets its mind and puts its intentionality and gets things done. So this region is all about succeeding and kind of going through barriers. With that in mind and your call to action, what is it that you would say to institutions? So as you look at the people here and their networks and the tentacles and how far they reach and all the people that are online, it is a vast powerhouse in here. So I'd like you to take a moment and just kind of inspire. What would you tell people here to go out and do in terms of the institutions they work with? And some of those will be enlightened, and some of those will need opportunity to be enlightened. So when you think about your response, I'd like you to kind of address those that are enlightened and those who can join that group from an institutional perspective. Thank you.
So you're putting it on me. Thank you, Lorraine. Lorraine, another one of the significant and critical people in Esperanza's history. You know, I think we need, going back, you know, I think one of the things that plagues us is the belief that our work, our theory of change, our organization's narrative is the only thing out there. And I think for our institutions is, you know, really recognizing that there isn't just one way of getting things done. And opening up to the idea that I may have to lose something. It may not be necessarily resources, but it could be an approach, right? Say, this organization does it better than me. That's really hard, right? Because especially for organizations and leaders of organizations, we are charged with, this is your responsibility, and sometimes it's a, go out and get what you can and forget about everyone else. So I think recognizing that we have to really think differently about what it means to serve our community, and accepting that it may not always be me there, or it may not be my organization, but putting that community interest top of mind. And I know, Ronayne, that's easier said than done. We've been talking about it for a long time. And it does take a few people to raise their hand and say, I'm ready, I'm ready to start these conversations. And by the way, that comment was more specifically directed to our Hispanic community, which you probably got that, because we haven't been at the table together. And we talked about this when I said, especially post-pandemic, we've gone from getting together, regardless if the conversation was good or not, there was an acknowledgement. We've almost gone to this indifference where we don't even acknowledge each other. And we've siloed ourselves in a way where we're seeing individual success, but we're not seeing that alignment and convergence where that success could be even greater. Hey, Margaret.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Margaret Sanchez, and I would like to thank everybody for having Esperanza and being so interested in what we do. I want to thank Keisha and, of course, our dear former president and CEO of Esperanza, Victor. I want to thank you because 3 years ago when I arrived, you were the first two that I spoke with, and you were so welcoming. I came from Broward County. What you are living now, right now in Cleveland, I lived it in the year 2000, where we were only 13% and growing the Latino community in Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, which is now composed of 35 cities. So by saying that, and following your comment, we need to work together for a common cause. We are citizens of Cleveland, and we have to care for everyone because we are all contributors of this city. We all pay taxes, we all spend money, we are great buying power, and we all need to take care of our own students' education. Yesterday I had the pleasure to have a visit from the Immigration Coalition, who's taking a group of teachers and going to different organization. She's here, if you please could stand up. If you would like, that group of teachers that she's taking from different schools and going to different nonprofits to learn about what they're doing to make it a better world here in Cleveland. So please, come together. This is about all of us who make this great city, Greater Cleveland. So I also want to thank YWCA who welcomed me. Helen is here. And of course, Tracy, Renee Richards, I don't know if she's present, but I want to thank her because all of them welcome me into this wonderful city where my husband and I decided to retire. So, you have our commitment, our staff, and all of us. If we work together, we're going to make this a greater Cleveland. Thank you.
He's not walking the plank.
Yeah, man. you all will see me next week. Yeah. No, thank you, everyone. And Dan, thank you. And thank you for your commitment to ensuring that our community's voice is heard.
Victor Ruiz, Keisha Gonzalez, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like all of you, and indeed, not just like all of you, but all of you have done something great. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a guardian of free speech, you can do so at cityclub.org. Our forum today, as I mentioned earlier, is part of our Local Heroes series presented in partnership with Citizens and Enbridge. Thanks to both of those organizations for their continued support of our region's leaders. The City Club would also like to welcome students joining us from eHovie Career Center in Milan, Ohio. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you here today. We'd also like to welcome guests at tables hosted by Cuyahoga Community College, the Cleveland Foundation, Esperanza Inc, and Citizens. Thank you all for being here. Next Friday, January 17th, we'll hear from Margaret Mitchell, who 3 years ago moved into the national spotlight as the CEO of YWCA USA, one of the oldest and largest women's organizations in the nation. We have a ton of other great stuff planned for 2025. Check it all out at cityclub.org. Thank you all so much for being with us today. Victor, Keisha, thank you again as well. Our forum is now adjourned. Have a great weekend.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.